This is Greg Penglis for Action Radio with Founding Moments, insights into our founding documents, sponsored by Rosa Volunteers here in Santa Rosa County, Florida. Santa Rosa Volunteers is available at their website, SRV1776.com. That's SRV1776.com. It has occurred to me in discussing the Anti-Federalist Papers in relation to the Articles of Confederation that the Anti-Federalist Papers seem to be lacking in context, having not gone over the Articles of Confederation in this series on our founding documents. During the time period we are analyzing, the Constitution had been written and was in the process of being sold to the individual states in order to be ratified. So at the time of this debate, the country was still under the Articles of Confederation. People could clearly see how the Articles worked and what the Anti-Federalist Papers were getting at. Whereas with the Federalist Papers, there was no experience with the Constitution, so it was like they were advertising with the Federalist Papers to sell their product with no knowledge of how or if that product worked. My impressions formed over time of the Articles is that they didn't work, weren't strong enough, caused trade wars, and were generally inefficient for government to operate. Now, rather than read scholarly works to try to convince me of their point of view, I shall go over the Articles myself using reason, logic, and my knowledge of history, so that you can then draw your own observations and conclusions as to the overall question of that time: should the United States adopt the new Constitution or fix the problems of the Articles of Confederation? History is written by winners, and I assume the perceptions and opinions of the winners are handed down through time as well. Since the Constitution was ratified and the Federalists were the winners, it makes sense that even today the perceptions and opinions of the Articles of Confederation would be as the Federalists saw it. And so they would have perpetuated through time their opinion that the Constitution was superior, even if their motives in part were as shallow as to want the Constitution simply because it would give them more power and a bigger federal government than was possible under the Articles of Confederation. And that question I will leave to you to ponder. From the Articles of Confederation Preamble. Whereas the delegates of the United States of America in Congress assembled did on the 15th day of November in the year of our Lord, 1777, and in the second year of the independence of America, agree to certain Articles of Confederation and perpetual union between the states of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Provincetown Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Article 1. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. Article 2. Each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right which is not by this confederation expressly delegated to the United States in Congress assembled. Article 2 appears very much like the 10th Amendment, where powers not specifically delegated to the federal government in the Constitution are reserved to the states. Now, why would this be left out of the original Constitution when it already existed in the Articles of Confederation? It later had to be put back in when the Bill of Rights was adopted some 4 years after the ratification of the Constitution. Could it be said, as I believe, that the Federalists actually left out state protections and limitations of federal power guaranteed by the Articles of Confederation in order to form a more powerful and larger federal government without those limitations and protections? This is just the first example. Article 3. The said states hereby severally enter into a firm league of friendship with each other for their common defense, the security of their liberties, and their mutual and general welfare, binding themselves to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them or any of them on account of religion, sovereignty, trade, or any other pretense whatsoever. Article 3 contains some of the future First Amendment to the Bill of Rights with regard to religion. Article 3 also contains a strong clause of mutual protection by the states themselves for the states themselves. The Constitution has the Congress and President as the sole protector of the states. The Constitution, as ratified, removed any mutual cooperative pact such as this between the states, so that under the Constitution, it is the federal government only which holds the country together and binds the states to the United States, and the states themselves have become isolated islands, operating individually and separately under the Union, with no mutual support or protection. This removal of the firm league of friendship appears to have been necessary for the Federalists so that the federal government under the Constitution shall not have to compete with the mutual friendship pledged by the states to each other in the Articles of Confederation. Thus, the federal government would have no rival government domestic power, nor check and balance on itself, and as such could eventually conquer the states, having thus divided them under the Constitution into individual units separate from each other. One wonders if the Confederate States formed their Confederacy in part to create the same firm league of friendship against the Union that resulted in the Civil War, but might never have happened had all the states of the Union had a mutual pledge of friendship and security binding them to assist each other against the ever-increasing power of the federal government in Washington, D.C. Was Lincoln as much a Federalist as those who ratified the Constitution, and just as adamant against the states binding together in any form, as a rival to the federal government's power, irrespective of the question of slavery? This raises the question of whether the states should once again enter into a firm league of friendship today for their security against the overwhelming and still increasing power of the federal government. Would such a states united pact be equal or greater to the United States federal government, where all the states were bound together to assist each other against all force offered to or attacks made upon them per Article 3 of the Articles of Confederation by the national government? Think about that this week before we continue with the next part of the Articles of Confederation. The source for the Federalist Papers is federalistpapers.org. The Anti-Federalist Papers are from selfeducatedamerican.com. The Articles of Confederation are from usconstitution.net. This is Greg Penglis for Action Radio with Founding Moments, sponsored by Santa Rosa Volunteers. Their website is SRV1776.com. That's SRV1776.com. Please share this report to anyone who needs it.